Yeah, just a quick review of the Optimum Nutrition Gold Standard 100% whey protein powder. Say that 10 times. So I just want to go over a few points you need to know as you're looking at these different powders and stuff. A few of the main points. So one scoop is 120 calories and 24 grams of protein. So that's pretty darn good. A lot of times if you look at these protein bars, they give you like 30 grams of protein, but they have like 300 calories. So, you want your protein in, but you don't want to get fat while you're trying to do that. So that's 120 calories is something I think I can live with. It does have 11 grams of essential amino acids, so you're also getting that. So yeah, I think if you're looking for some whey protein, that help build muscle, maybe maintain muscle, I think this is a good choice. Now, if you're in the gym lifting a lot of weights and stuff, or if you're just starting out, you have some kind of shoulder problem or rotator cuff problem, one other resource I want to bring up, the 6-minute torn rotator cuff solution. It says for seniors, but actually the program's really good, so high-level athletes could actually use it. If you have any kind of a rotator cuff problem, this is your go-to resource. It goes over like what the rotator cuff is. And actually, your rotator cuff is the big stabilizer of your shoulder joint. Basically, it's a ball and socket joint, but it's not like, say, your hip. Your hip is a deep ball and socket joint, and so it doesn't really depend much on muscles to support it, but the shoulder is all about muscles to keep it in place because it's so shallow, the ball and socket joint. And of all the muscles that stabilize your rotator cuff, main job to keep that ball or tighten that socket. So it's really important to have a good, strong rotator cuff. You go into a question and answer section, which is great. What are the symptoms of a rotator cuff tear? Any arm maneuvers that might indicate I have a tear? What imaging tests are used? Where exactly does it tear at? All the things you'd always wonder about. Are there different kinds of tears? Here's a good one. I have a rotator cuff tear and I'm in a lot of pain. I need surgery, right? Well, not necessarily. So this is a very evidence-based book. Each one of these is a study is to support what it says. So basically, to answer that question, you take, say, 100 people with rotator cuff tears, right? Some are big, some are small, some are medium. And then you measure the size of the tear, and then you run a pain scale, like a visual analog scale. So therefore, you find out how big are these tears and how much are these people hurting. And so you would think there'd be a correlation between the bigger tears have the most pain and the smaller tears have the least amount of pain. That's actually not what they find. They find there's people walking around with big old tears that hardly hurt, and likewise there's people with small tears that are in a lot of pain. And then of course there's the other group of people that are asymptomatic. In other words, it's set in the literature that, look, there's a lot of people walking around with rotator cuff tears that don't have any pain at all. And there are lots of studies you can look up and find that out. So really, just based on pain, no, you don't want to jump into surgery just based on pain. It might not tell you much about your rotator cuff tear. What happens if I leave my rotator cuff tear alone? That's good to know. Here's probably the best one. How does exercise compare to surgery when it comes to treating my torn rotator cuff? So the only way to answer this scientifically is to do a randomized controlled trial. And that's where you take a group of people, say 100 people with rotator cuff tears, 50 you randomly assign to surgery, the other 50 you randomly assign to a good exercise program, and then you follow them over like 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years. And there are some really good studies with long-term follow-up. And then you say, hey, who did better at the end of the study? People that did surgery or the people that just did a good exercise program? So, to make a long story short, you end up at the same place. Whether you have surgery or whether you have do a good exercise program, according to the randomized controlled trials, you end up at the same place. So, anyway, and then this ends with a good exercise program. There's actually 3 different levels. So, let's say you can hardly move your arm. You could do the first level. But if you want to just prevent a problem and you have a good high-functioning shoulder, you just use the last level. So, a really good resource. But yeah, hey, if you want to build some muscle, maintain your muscle mass, you're looking for some extra protein, this is a good supplement, so check it out.